finally on the internet. And it was right after the September 11th attacks, and I was in New York. I was a rabbi in New York, and there was a convening of Muslim and Christian and Jewish leaders in New York City for a day, and it was such a powerful gathering. I had the chance to have some wonderful discussions with the Imam, which is a Muslim version of a rabbi, if you will. We had some powerful dialogue. Since coming to Florida, unfortunately, my relationship with the Muslim community has not been as strong. The Florida Jewish community, the Florida Muslim community, unfortunately, has been hit pretty hard with scandal. And some of the people that I began dialoguing with were later part of, turns out, the terrorist ring. We didn't know that, obviously, when we spoke with them. And then some of you know that I was involved for a while in a dialogue with CARE, the Council of American Islamic Relations. That was until I myself learned, and I shared with some of you 2 years ago, their connections with Hamas and some of the other organizations. And there are some of us who are desperately hungry for healthy connections to the Islamic world. We can keep hoping and praying for that type of connection down here. I want to talk about a tough subject tonight, and it's been one that's been blasted all over the news the past several days. I want to start by sharing a press release from the Islamic Society of North America, also known as ISNA, I-S-N-A, which is really the largest Muslim organization in the United States. As some of my friends who are actively involved in interfaith dialogue with the Muslim community say that ISNA, or the Islamic Society, is as American as apple pie. ISNA on November 5th came out with a statement saying they condemn in the strongest terms the attack on soldiers at Fort Hood, resulting in the murder of at least a dozen soldiers and the wounding of many others. We express our deepest condolences to the victims and their families. Although many details of the shooting are unknown at this time, it appears that the attack was led by a career soldier, Major Nidal Malik Hassan. The soldier who led this attack was either, they say, mentally unstable or was motivated by a perverted ideology for which there can be no justification. Obviously, if you've been following the news at all, you've seen that Hassan, the shooter, had many links to terrorism, including contacts with radical Muslim teachers and teachings, shouting in Arabic before he opened fire, praise God. And he was known for vehemently disagreeing with American military and their role in the Middle East, specifically oppressing, he felt, the Muslim community. Now, many have condemned the rush to judgment and lots of talk. There's been lots of talk about being politically correct and not blaming a religion for this crime. And I'm incredibly sensitive to this, not only with some of the events that have unfolded in the Jewish community down here in Florida with a well-known law firm, but more powerfully with the Madoff situation. We know what it's like to have one guy go out and commit, not murder, but a pretty heinous crime that affected millions of people, and then all of us be lumped in and blamed for it. I am currently in a bit of a tussle online with a professor up at my wife's alma mater, a man by the name of Daniel McGowan, who's an economics professor at Hobart William Smith, who is a well-known Holocaust denier. And he has written a few articles having to do with Madoff and those terrible Jews. And I have been arguing with him. Really, it's a waste of my time. I don't know why I do it. But trying to do something that I'm not, which is going to change him. But he has one article where he talks about Madoff, the Jews, and the Great Weasel, which is what he refers to Elie Wiesel, the wonderful man who has done so much work. So, and also think back to the 90s when Rabin was killed by one of our own, by an extremist. We have extremists in our own tradition. We can't deny that. And the shame and the horror, and how many times, whether we like it or not, when we hear a terrible crime has been committed, we want to know, are they Jewish? Because when they are, you feel a sense of responsibility and almost shame. And you know, I have spoken out against Madoff. Some of you remember I talked about the possibility of excommunication with Madoff in the Jewish community, because we do have that, and we've had some wonderful discussions about that. I have been very interested in following the American Muslim response to Fort Hood because of what it's like to be a Jew and be blamed for things that Jews do when they do terrible things. And I wanted to share with you some of the things that I have learned this week. Just over the past 24 hours, one of the best known Muslim speakers in the West, a professor by the name of Jamil Badawi, someone who's also a member of the Islamic Society of North America's board of directors, he just responded online to a question on a very well-known Islamic American website, a question that said basically, how do we as Muslims respond to being blamed for the Fort Hood incident? And his response is a bit lengthy, but I wanted to share it with you. He writes that mass irrational criminal shootings are part of a common occurrence in many parts of the world, including the United States. No one keeps harping on the religious background of the murderers. What we commonly hear is that such murderers may be deranged, or responders to harassments, or bullying, or simply being psychopaths or sociopaths. Only in the case of Islam, if the murderer is a Muslim, devout or not, or when the name sounds Muslim or Arab, many people will jump to the conclusion that the 6 to 8 million American Muslims are to blame, as if they were co-conspirators or even perpetrators of that crime. That is done irrespective of the fact that the mainstream Muslim community has nothing to do with such crimes, planning or executing such a crime, and irrespective of their clear, direct, and unequivocal condemnation of such crimes. Hours after the tragic events in Fort Hood, a former employee of a company in Orlando was involved in an indiscriminate act of shooting, resulting in murder and injury of innocent employees. No big questions were raised about his religious backgrounds, which church he might have been frequenting, and how did the sermons of his pastors or ministers might have motivated him to commit such a crime. What we heard is that he may have been deranged or bitter about the loss of his job, or was under severe distress and snapped. Suppose that a deranged person shouted a Christian symbol such as Hail Mary before murdering others. What would be the rightful Christian response? A lot of decent Christians will say that he abused such a religious symbol. As such, his action or his crime has nothing to do with the Christian faith. As a Muslim, he writes, I would certainly agree with their response. As I said, when Jews commit a crime, and all Jews are sometimes lumped into it, I would speak out. First, I would speak out against the suspect and his or her crime, and then in defense of our tradition and our faith. And if the crime somehow included the shouting of Jewish phrases or involved distorted Jewish teachings, I would speak out and prove, without any doubt, that there's no connection to Judaism and this person. ISNA, the Islamic Society of North America, and other Muslim groups have spoken out and attempted to distance themselves. But my question tonight is,